Hello, and welcome to a Morrowind thing, because I just love this game, and you clicked on this video, so I'm guessing you do too. Please, come in, shed your travails and stay a while. So many people have said so many words about the way Morrowind handles fast travel, but that's not this video. I have plans for that video penciled in, but this is not it. No, I want to talk about Morrowind's slow travel. Walking the roads on foot to get from place to place. These minutes, hours throughout a playthrough are, in my opinion, one of the biggest contributors to what makes Morrowind special. And I want to talk about it. So, I was playing Morrowind, as one does in this, the year of Vivek 2024, and I came upon a sign. Not a sign from the heavens, but a normal, mundane road sign. Specifically, the sign at the first crossroads the player is likely to come upon if they choose not to take the Siltstrider to Balmora. Y'all do that, right? That's not just a me thing, right? I have somewhere well over 1,000 hours in this game, so I've seen this exact signpost many times. Other than the one just outside of Seyda-Neen, I have likely seen no other signpost more times. It's not a new sight to me. There's nothing special about this sign. It is utterly unremarkable. But I stopped and I stared at it for a while. And then I took a screenshot because that's how I am. I had been collecting mushrooms and other alchemical ingredients in the area and got, a little turned around during the process, so jogged on over to the intersection and I looked at the sign to know where I was. And it struck me that this simple interaction hardly exists in any other game. Typically, games do not ask the player to worry about navigation very much. They'll give the player a map marker or a waypoint or even a brightly glowing line like many open-world racing games do. Yes, these games have very different design goals, but fundamentally, these are all just different solutions to the same problem: player navigation. Even Morrowind's direct successors in Oblivion and Skyrim only require the player to travel in one direction. Once you reach a destination, the option to fast travel to it in the future becomes available. The player can always just fast travel out of a situation to wherever they want to be. Yes, Morrowind has mark and recall and intervention scrolls, but they are imperfect forms of fast travel. Mark and recall require knowledge of those spells, or having acquired the effects through other means, and may only teleport the player to a single set point, and specifically one that they've been at before, which greatly limits its flexibility. Almcivi and Divine Intervention can take you all over the map, though only to specific destinations depending on your current location. By design, these destinations are each a nexus of other fast travel options, but these spells are ultimately much more useful for getting out than they are for getting in. The ancient Dunmer strongholds dotted across the map are also an option available to the player, offering advanced characters the ability to penetrate into the areas less well served by the more typical fast travel systems. The limitation with these is that collecting the propylon indexes required to make use of the system is no small task. Even hunting down a single one in the vanilla game can be a struggle. There's an official plugin that adds a quest to find them all and create a master index, but it is still a distinctly non-trivial endeavor. Propylon travel is effectively an exclusively endgame proposition. Given this glut of different fast travel options, you might assume that Vardenfell is enormous, but in terms of actual land area, it's pretty small by modern standards. Kind of fun fact that you probably already know if you're watching this video, pretty top of the iceberg if you know what I mean. All of the modern Elder Scrolls games, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, are built to the same scale as each other. So this glorious island of Vardenfell that we love so much is actually a fair bit smaller than the games that have followed it, and has certainly been completely dwarfed by the industry at large. Much has been said about the limited draw distance and slow movement speed of Morrowind being used to make the game world appear larger, and while both of these can certainly impact the player's perception of the scale of the world, I realized as a kid that the island was truthfully quite small. It doesn't take that long to cross the island on foot if you don't stop at every ancestral tomb or random NPC. For me, at least, it is the way in which you navigate through the world and the relationship you form with it that makes the island of Vardenfell feel like a vast landscape. First, fast travel in Morrowind is cheap. Very cheap. Almost as cheap as hitting that subscribe button. There's something about slipping it in, like, it gets me every time. The monetary cost for fast travel exists, but in comparison to the player's wealth, it is incredibly insignificant. I cannot remember any point in my many hours of playing when I was unable to afford transport to wherever I wanted to be. Using the travel networks is ultimately expected of the player, which is why you're directed to the Siltstrider as immediately as possible. Celis Gravius suggests you take the Siltstrider to Balmora even before the tutorial proper is over. Without the fast travel systems, Morrowind would entirely turn into the slog of walking that some of its detractors claim it is. And while, yes, there is a lot of walking, and I actually think that's a good thing, the structure and coverage of the fast travel systems is very deliberate. I've already mentioned Mark and Recall, Intervention, and the Propylon network, and how they're either mostly for getting out of the deep wilderness, or are fairly limited to the endgame, but they're far from the only fast travel options available. There's also the aforementioned Siltstriders, the guild guides of the Mages Guild, and the incredibly mundane boats. These are the fast travel options available to the player and the general public, and I assume are the ways most normal people of Vardenfell get around. But there's a catch to these networks. While Siltstriders, boats, and the guides of the Mages Guild are extremely useful, they all have pretty limited coverage. Coverage which mostly leaves the eastern half, or maybe 2/3, of Vardenfell extremely isolated, with all non-Propylon fast travel to the area limited to coastal destinations. The inland regions of Dagon Fell, the northern Ashlands, Azura's Coast, Molag Amur, and the Grazelands are accessible only by foot. This creates a division and a characterization in the player's mind. The west and south are the urban, well-connected regions, while the east and north are rural and secluded. This also plays out in the cultures of these regions. Settlements in the West Gash, Bitter Coast, and Ascadian Isles are fairly amenable to Imperial influences, and Outlanders, such as the player, will experience only mild racism. By Morrowind standards anyway. People won't typically try to kill you on sight at the very least. Even the Redoran-controlled regions further north are relatively friendly. The eastern stretches of Vardenfell, on the other hand, are controlled by the reclusive Telvanni wizards from their fantastical mushroom towers, their culture staunchly traditionalist and extremely alien and hostile to the player. The various Ashlander camps that are scattered about these remote regions are host to many of the most aggressively xenophobic NPCs, many of whom will even attack the player on sight. It is these lands that you must traverse almost entirely by foot. The player really doesn't have any effective options for doing otherwise. When coupled with the diversity of flora, fauna, and geographic features found across Vardenfell, the regions of Morrowind feel highly distinct from each other, lending the world a sense of immense scale that just wasn't possible for Bethesda to accomplish at the time through sheer technical prowess alone. But a detailed landscape is nothing without anything to do in it, and this is where the quests of Morrowind come into play. The player is certainly free to charge off in any direction they damn well please right from the start of the game, but it's much more likely that players, especially new players, will be looking for some direction. Quests, then, are the impetus for the player to get out there and do some exploring. When the player decides upon a destination, whether of their own volition or the urging of prophecy, they have a choice to make on how they will get there. Will they use the fast travel network, or will they hoof it? For most quests, there's at least some portion of overland travel on foot that can't be avoided. Call it last mile travel if you want. I have fond memories of being given a destination in a quest and turning to my trusty physical map, spread upon the floor with care and lit by the eerie light of the CRT. I'd find my current location and my destination, and I'd plan my trip from there. Let's assume a hypothetical early game quest where the player must travel from Balmora to Nessus. Well, I know Balmora has a Siltstrider port because I've used it about 50,000 times, and I can just make out a Strider at Nessus on the map. But the Balmora Siltstrider can't take me right there. I can see that Aldrune has a Strider though, so I can probably bounce from there to Nisus. Actually, isn't that weird? You can take a Strider between Saint Denis and Nisus, but not Balmora and Nisus, which is closer. Maybe the terrain just doesn't make sense or something? Is this ever explained in some obscure bit of dialogue or lore? Drop it in the comments if so, I'd be curious to know. The Morrowind community has no shortage of intrepid cartographers who've produced a wide range of maps to aid in navigating the web of travel options available. There's even this one clearly inspired by the modernist style of Massimo Vignelli's classic New York City subway map of 1972. Anyway, going back to our hypothetical journey, I could take these two Striders to my destination, but assume I haven't been further north than Caldera yet. Perhaps it would be better for me to take the Strider to Aldrune and then walk from there to Nisus. I'd be covering entirely new territory. So much to discover and explore, such adventure! But the movement speed is so slow, I hear you saying. Why would you subject yourself to Morrowind's famously slow movement speed? Well, for one, I'm a steadfast adherent of the Church of RP Walking. And for two, it is on the roads that one may find adventure. And with adventure comes opportunity. Unless you find yourself on the wrong side of an Ordinator or some of the Ashlander tribes, which basically means anywhere in their proximity, the settlements across Vardenfell are quite safe. Leaving them, as you must for the vast majority of quests, is always a risk. You could run into a cliff racer after all. However, it is not so much the roads that present the player with risk and reward, but the things you find along the way to your objective. I will again refer back to our hypothetical journey. Assuming we only took the Silt Strider up to Aldrune and took off on foot from there, we'll come across any number of dungeons or quest givers out in the wild on our way to the northwest, to say nothing of the local wildlife that we'll inevitably have to endure. Every one of these caves, ruins, or ancestral tombs we come upon could hold untold riches, or they might contain high-level enemies that we aren't yet ready to face. The static levels of many of Morrowind's enemies makes each dungeon a bit of a gamble if you can actually handle it. This then serves to encourage the player to make multiple trips through regions as they level up and grow in power. But more than merely enemies to deal with, there's a wide range of maladies that can befall the player, which brings me to the thing Morrowind does better than any other game I can think of: the preparation phase. I've never heard anyone else mention it or give it a name, but the preparation phase is the term I use to describe something that I love in every game where I've seen it. And not every game has it, even other RPGs, even other Elder Scrolls games don't have it to the same degree. This is a specific part of the macro gameplay loop. Okay, just to make sure we're on the same page, let me define that concept as well. The gameplay loop is a cycle of interaction that a player has with the game they're playing. It differs between games, but a very simple example is getting an objective, doing the task, getting your rewards, and doing it all again. That's the loop part. These gameplay loops exist in every game and at all different levels, all the way from mere seconds to several hours. An oft-referenced quote from a Halo developer describes combat as 30 seconds of fun that gets stretched out and repeated, with minor variations to keep things fresh and interesting throughout the entire runtime of a game. This is an example of a micro gameplay loop. Morrowind has these 30 seconds of fun as well. You find an enemy, you engage in combat with them, you loot them when you win, and you move on to do it again. There are multiple gameplay loops in Morrowind. Dungeons are a loop of entering the dungeon, working through it, getting your loot, and leaving to find the next one. But moving up through the chain of loops, we'll eventually get to one where the fundamental steps are getting a quest, leaving to do the quest, then coming back to town to offload your loot, get your next quest, and restock on supplies. It's that last step in this loop that Morrowind does incredibly well. After you come back into town from your adventure and turn your quest in, the next step is preparing for another. This is a period where the player has to ask questions about what they need to bring with them, while balancing this against a myriad of different considerations. Mostly this is inventory management. Do you need to bring a potion of cure common disease, an intervention or other utility scroll? What about if you get hit with a drain strength effect? How do you plan to deal with that? Are there any potions you use for combat buffs against challenging opponents? Perhaps you need to re-up on ammunition for your marksman weapons, restock on healing or other restoration potions, get your armor and weapons repaired. The anticipation of considering all the possibilities that could befall you on your next jaunt across Vardenfell is intoxicating, frankly. The possibility space so broad, the number of options you have at your disposal to deal with it all. No other game does this as well as Morrowind does. The biggest limiting factor to consider when preparing for your next adventure in Morrowind is refreshingly mundane. Wait. If you've ever ventured into camping gear YouTube, you know that they're always on about the weight of their gear. Save a pound here, gain a pound to spend on something else. They're always trying to find that edge of efficiency, and it's here in Morrowind as well, though the biggest benefit of traveling light is a little different. Each kilogram that you bring with you is functionally a kilogram of loot that you can't bring back. You could go out there into the waste stocked to the nines, but you won't be able to bring back nearly as much loot as someone that runs with the barest essentials, and whittling down to that list is where the real fun of this phase comes from. Because here's the thing, once you clear the dungeon and do whatever and get your loot, you still have to get back to town with all of it. That's also part of the planning you have to do before you set out. Are you getting out with a teleportation spell of some kind? You can do that while over encumbered, a notable and very interesting difference from later Elder Scrolls games, but teleports lack flexibility as to your destination. You can't carry as much if you walk back to town, but you can get yourself to wherever you want, keeping in mind that you move slower the more you're carrying, so you're more vulnerable to attacks from wildlife, by which I mostly mean cliff racers. This is even a consideration while you're walking to and from your destination. You're bound to come across other potential points of interest on your way. How many of them do you stop to loot? Can you stop to loot? Forget the question of if you can handle the enemies within. Do you even have the spare carrying capacity to benefit from looting it? How you make it back to town is an open question in Morrowind, and it's effectively not asked by Oblivion or Skyrim. This small difference is key to immersing the player within the world and keeping you thinking. By not relying on fast travel through a map, the player is never pulled out of the control of their character. Even teleport spells are you casting the spell and being instantly teleported. The loading screen, which practically no longer exists with OpenMW, is a technical limitation, not a representation of time passing on autopilot. It's a genius little detail, and I'd have it no other way. Before I sign off, I want to clarify that I do know there are ways to significantly increase your movement speed in Morrowind that I didn't mention. There's various jump fortification tricks or other spells, the boots of blinding speed, skooma stacking, so on and so forth. But I didn't want to muddy the waters on this video too much with covering every little possibility. 1, I want these things to flow a little bit, and 2, it's more fun if some things are left for new players to discover themselves. That's half the fun we all had growing up with the game. Why ruin it for others? That said, I love reading about the creative solutions you all keep sharing in the comments, and I think they're a great way to share these kinds of things without the video itself spoiling all the fun bits. So please keep sharing. Both of my last videos have had great discussions in the comments, and I have no interest in putting a stop to that. And finally, if you've made it this far, please consider liking and/or subscribing as you deem appropriate. It's never required, but always appreciated. And at the end of the day, thank you very much for stopping by and lending me your ear. And, as always, have a great one.